Hello and welcome to Decoding the Tarot, the Lovers. This is a presentation that was put together by me based on my personal exploration of ancient mystical symbolism, Kabbalistic symbolism, and the Tarot. I've learned from many sources, but the foundation of all of the work that I do comes through the modern mystery school, which is an ancient mystery school tradition that originates with King Solomon. And we're going to talk more about that later. But I also studied through something called the Builders of the Adytum, if that's something you want to look up later, if this is something that interests you. My name is Osiris Indriya. I started my journey through mysticism and spirit at a very young age. Now I co-own and manage the Light Center that I share with my wife, Chiana Indriya, here in Bothell, Washington. So Blessoterra is the name of our center. And I'm also a minister at the Institute of Awakened Mastery. I'm a teacher, healer, and guide in the lineage of King Solomon, certified by the Modern Mystery School. I'm a marketing lead at a software startup, a DJ, a music producer, an artist, a husband, and a father. Thanks for being here. We're going to get started with symbolism and the Kabbalah. So this is the context for our conversation today. So what is Kabbalah? Most people who have done some level of study in Kabbalah are aware of the primary symbol that is most frequently described in that system, which is called the Tree of Life. What you can see here is the symbol with the interlocking circles in the background is called the Flower of Life. And here is a version of the Tree of Life colored and overlaid on top of the Flower of Life. Both of these are Kabbalistic symbols, very ancient symbols, but you can also look at other symbols like this one. This is describing a very similar thing using concentric circles. It looks a lot more like the cross section of a tree, but this is another way of viewing the same thing. So there's a lot of symbols and ways of viewing the same details through this system called Kabbalah. You can see here there are some Hebrew letters and Hebrew words on the screen, and the Kabbalah is best known as being a part of the mystic tradition within the Jewish faith. Now, Kabbalah has been in many other systems as well, but still today, and in most traditions, the Hebrew language is often used when describing and working with Kabbalah, primarily because the language itself of original ancient Hebrew is directly tied to the geometries, the math, the patterns of the Tree of Life and Kabbalah. So the language was literally intertwined with this same system. So of course, it's the best language to use to describe it. Now, we're not going to go deep into Hebrew or any of that, but we are going to look at the symbols, and the symbols are much more universal and easily understood. Kabbalah is a system of knowing the self, but also knowing the universe, knowing everything outside of us, and even being able to know what was previously unknowable. So in this image, we see someone who has used a tool like their cane and has pierced the place where the sky and the earth meet at the horizon and is able to see through to the machinery of the universe. So being able to see beyond the obvious and to see the inner workings of why things are the way they are. That is a big focus of Kabbalah. But it all starts with me. It starts with me investigating myself, my existence, and then my place in this greater universe. So we're talking about tarot as well today, or tarot. Many people say it different ways. I like to say tarot. Tarot is made of archetypes. So archetypes are a collectively inherited unconscious idea, pattern of thought, image, etc., that is universally present in the individual psyches. This is a quote from Carl Jung. Carl Jung was also an initiate of the Solomonic tradition. He is Swiss, a psychologist, and of course, a mystery school initiate. So this is the wheel of archetypes. So this is showing, it's got two different axes. You've got the difference between social on the left, so that's more external or focused on the other, versus ego on the right, which is more focused on the self. You also have the spectrum of freedom at the top, and then order and structure on the bottom. So freedom to an extreme might feel like chaos, especially to somebody who's way at the extreme of order, but that might feel very restrictive to somebody who's more on the freedom spectrum. So as we go around this circle, I'm going to start at the bottom, which we have a ruler, the innocent, a regular, a caregiver, a lover, a jester, an outlaw, explorer, creator, hero, magician, and sage. So these are patterns that are universally present in individual psyches. So that means that regardless of where you live, where you are, what your culture is, there's some patterns to being human that are present in all of us. It's almost like it's a part of our operating system. And it colors how we see ourselves, but also how we see others in our world. And one person may be multiple archetypes depending on the situation. You can see this very present in the tarot. So here are some examples of archetypes that are not on the wheel precisely, but we have the hero again, but we have the villain, the warrior, the victim, the master, the beginner, the guru, and the student. What's interesting is I said each of these, I imagine either a picture or some idea came into your mind instantly without you thinking about it. You didn't have to actively go after. And many of them, we may have even assigned gender, age, maybe even a race. And it might not be exactly the same for each of us, but the core of that archetype is very, very similar for every person. Culture can kind of color or influence the expression of it, but the core pattern is very similar. All right, so let's talk about Kabbalah and Tarot. I know there's many decks out there. You may own several different kinds that may not follow what I'm describing here, but I'm basing what I'm describing on the ancient court cards, which were originally created in Europe in around the 1600s as images to represent members of royal courts. And Kabbalists at that time thought these cards that were being painted and distributed amongst the noble people, mystics, magicians, healers, people who were experienced in Kabbalah were there as advisors. They saw this and said, we could take some of the Kabbalistic information we have and apply this to this kind of imagery and add a lot of symbolism to describe very complex things that are hard to learn. So here, what you see are all of the cards of a standard tarot deck. And what I'm using as the standard is the Rider-Waite tarot deck, or the Builders of the Adytum tarot deck that was created by Paul Foster Case. Those are very similar, slightly different, both great decks. There are others, of course, that follow the Rider-Waite pattern. And so those would be Kabbalistic as well, whether the artist knows that they're following a Kabbalistic pattern or not. See, as you get to copycats down the line, they may not have understood the symbolism. And many people feel like, oh, as an artist, I know better, and I'm going to change the symbols to what feels right to me, which is fine. That's totally valid, but it may not be Kabbalistic anymore. That becomes more like impressionistic, right? This is my impression, or this is my experience, as opposed to something that was designed to be more neutral and universal for all people to use based on archetypes. So on the left, you see the Tree of Life. On the right, you see the tarot deck, the complete tarot deck laid out as the Tree of Life. And each of these cards goes specifically here. This isn't like someone thought later, hey, this is a cool idea. What if I see if I can lay this out and match it? This was designed with this in mind. So the original creators of the Rider-Waite Tarot deck knew this and did this on purpose. So it looks like a jumble of cards. Let's start unpacking it a little bit. So you have the Ace, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9, and the 10 in these locations, which is the same locations as each of the circles, the colored circles on the left. So you notice it goes Ace is at the top, 10 is at the bottom. And kind of makes a zigzagging pattern going down. Now there's a lot of other cards that are not number cards. Those are called the major arcana. So there's 22 major arcana, and they lay out on the connecting lines between the circles. So you can see them now without a word on top of them, without a number word. Those are the 22 paths. So today we're talking about the Lovers, and the Lovers are on a very specific part of the tree. Let's talk about the design of the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is designed where the top of the Tree of Life is the unmanifest or the possible. It's the things that might be but have never existed. It's total potential. It's what could be. Whereas the bottom of this tree is what is manifesting right now. It is now happening. So it's already happening. So the ability to influence what is down at the bottom of the tree is much less because it's things that already are existing. Let's talk about like a chair. Let's say somebody had the idea for the first time to come up with a chair. They were tired of standing or laying, and they wanted a state between standing and laying. And so they're imagining, what could I do between standing and laying? Well, you know, what if there was a place where I could still be upright, but maybe bend my legs? So you start thinking through that process. Now, the potential that something could exist between standing and laying is up at the top of this tree. The process of imagining what that might be, choosing a rock that might be there and sitting on it, is the process of moving down the Tree of Life. So that's a creative act. And that creative act started as the potential that something could exist, goes through thinking, planning, execution, action, and then you're sitting. You might be the first human that ever sat, but that had to come through this flow, this process from unmanifest to manifest. You can also look at it as a spectrum between low vibration or matter, physical things, and high vibration energy. Now, I want to be really clear that this energy is not the same thing as what we talk about in science and physics, where you talk about matter and energy being somewhat interchangeable. That all exists down at the bottom. So everything we call the electromagnetic spectrum, the physical universe, the measurable universe, those are all things happening right now. So they're at the bottom of the Tree of Life. When I'm talking about high vibration and energy, I'm actually talking about the realm of spirit. So this is a different condition of energy that's beyond all things physical. This is a different layer of dimension. So according to the ancient Kabbalists, humans have the capacity to experience all of these states. Of course, the higher you get on this system, the more difficult it is to achieve, because you're getting farther and farther away from this physical world where the body exists. And that's kind of the challenge of the mystics, is how far up this system can I go? Can I achieve that in this lifetime? So as I described my vision earlier, what does it take for me to reach mastery? Well, it's going to be existing in all of these places, being able to have access to all of this spectrum. The Lovers exists way up here. So I know that the Lover's card, I've received readings before when the Lover's card comes up and someone says, oh, you're about to meet somebody special, or you're, you're going to have more physical intimacy in your life and things like that. But that all exists down at the bottom. That would all happen down at the 10 level. What this is something totally different. This is way up towards the spiritual end of the spectrum. So let's decode the Lovers. This is the basic pattern we're going to use for our conversation today. So this is zooming in on the upper part of the tree of life, and I'm translating the Hebrew words that describe each of these circles, or sephira. On the left, we have understanding, on the right, wisdom, and the bottom, beauty. If we lay out where the major arcana cards go on these connecting lines, the Empress connects understanding to wisdom. The Empress is natural law, the embodiment of what should and is, what should be and is. So the example of nature. Connecting wisdom to beauty is the Emperor. The Emperor executes the law, the executive, the one that enforces the law, in other words. So she is the law, he does the law. What the law states, he puts into action. So we have a relationship here. And right away, if we add the Lovers, connecting beauty to understanding, we see here that a feminine, so this is, again, we're way up on this glyph. So this is like an archetype of feminine. This is not a person. This is not like your grandmother. Another thing people say, tarot readings, oh, the Empress, this is some matriarch in your life. So the Empress is natural law. The Emperor is the action that the law requires. And the Lovers is the relationship between those two things. So we have 1 + 1 = 3. Because the Empress is still the Empress, the Emperor is still the Emperor, and the Lovers is the relationship that they create together. So that's already relatively profound. Most of us are not trained in life to think of our relationships as being a thing other than us that we essentially give life to by relating to any person, whether it be like a committed partnership, a loving partnership, or it could be a business partnership. It could be a conversation you're having with a random stranger. The two of you come together and create a thing. However, I'm going to be repeating this throughout this conversation. Each of these characters are you. So this is your feminine, your masculine, and their relationship all existing within you. So there's the Lovers, way up there. So the Lovers has some characters within it. We have the feminine, we have the masculine, and we have the angel or the spirit. And I want you to pay special attention to how these characters are interacting, and also remembering again that all of these characters are you or within you. So we have the woman, and we can also say she's the feminine and the conscious awareness, the one that is aware of what's going on. The man or the male, the masculine, is the subconscious. So it's what we're not aware of, but still is an engaged part of us. The angel is the spirit or the superconscious, the part of us that is conscious beyond our typical consciousness, the part of us that knows who we really are, who we've always been, and knows our connection to spirit, experiences it right now. So let's look at their relationship. The feminine is looking up to spirit. The masculine is looking at the feminine. I mean, are we surprised? But the spirit has its eyes closed. It's focused inward. It's focused on me. So the conscious awareness is focused on spirit. Spirit is focused on itself. Masculine, the subconscious, is focused on the conscious. So this is a formula for how a balanced and healthy human awareness and consciousness operates, and how we accomplish purpose. Because again, we're way high on this tree of life. So that means that we're really close to the source. So we're close to who and what we really are at this stage. So this is the formula for living a purposeful life, for living a life of fulfillment and joy. Focusing upward, focusing on spirit actively, eyes open, spirit just being aware of itself, and the subconscious being informed by the consciousness, looking at spirit and providing the conditions around us for us to succeed. The spirit is also holding its arms out. That is, of course, an important gesture. That's not an accident. The Kabbalists knew what they were doing. The spirit is holding the masculine and feminine in separation. Now, how many spiritual people go, oh, we're all supposed to be in unity. We're supposed to be one. We're supposed to be together. But yet here, separation is holding these two apart. So there is a fundamental separation of the masculine and feminine within us that is necessary for the accomplishment of purpose. Because if there wasn't this separation of jobs, then we would be in unity. We would be in oneness with God and nothing would exist. We would be in stasis. So the fundamental separation actually allows all of the permutations and amazing experiences of life to be possible. So we have a triangle here, right? It's pretty clear. We also have pentagram. There's another look at the pentagram. And here is one way you can lay the elements out on the pentagram. You can have spirit, fire, air, water, and earth. Interesting that the feminine has a tree and a snake whose belly crawls on the earth. The masculine has a flaming tree behind him. The hands are separated at air and water, but what is between separating the male and female but clouds? And what are clouds? Water in the air. Interesting. We're just getting started. I know that we've already used a lot of time. So I'm going to start cooking here because I want to make sure we get through all of this. So I just mentioned there's another character of the snake there, whispering in the ear. I know a lot of people equate that to Eve. But if you think instead of Eve as the original sinner, but instead the active consciousness, of course, that's where things begin. We don't have to be so judgy about it, right? It's just the part of us that is, the embodiment part of us is the one that's aware and focusing on things. Now, of course, things don't always work out, right? We don't stay up in that higher state all the time. That would be silly to think that we do. So the lovers repeat through the major arcana as you go down the tree. So they repeat right here. There's 3 cards we're going to look at next. So we're going to descend down the tree. So connecting splendor or the mind to beauty is the devil. Connecting beauty to victory, which is related to emotions, is the death card. And going straight down the middle from beauty to foundation is temperance. I'll bring the lovers back. Now, the devil, it's super obvious that they're related. Death, not so much, but I'll unpack that for you. Temperance, you can see it, but kind of not see it because there's some missing characters. So you have the feminine, the spirit, and the masculine laid out like this. Unpacking the devil, we got a different situation going on. Most people don't like looking at this card. Maybe this point of view will help you see it a little differently. Here we have the feminine looking at the masculine. The masculine is pointing to and looking at this place where they're stuck. They are chained to a block. The spirit is now eyes wide open because something ain't right. It doesn't get to focus inward because something is wrong. And the spirit must be aware, not only be aware, it has to now maintain the separation with one hand up above while bringing a fire down to the masculine to get things fixed. So this is when we go wrong by being attached to illusion. And if you look at this image, the rectangle at the bottom, it's actually a sacred geometric symbol of a Fibonacci rectangle. And it's just a rectangle. It might as well be drawn on a black wall with chalk. So it doesn't even have substance. What has substance is the link and chain that we're connected to. And by being attached to the illusion, we become animals. So they have horns, they have tails. We become the body without connection to spirit. We're just animals on the earth. And the subconscious says, hey, we're attached. So that means the subconscious, which is creating the conditions around us, is providing opportunities to remind us that we're stuck. So this can be where we get caught in loops. I imagine each of us knows what we're talking about when you start creating, for example, you're in a job, you hate the job. You leave the job, you go to a new job. It's all great at first. Over time, it slowly happens that all the things you hated about the previous job are here in this job too. Well, I better leave this job and go find another job. And you get the next job. It's great at first. And it seems to like there's no way it could unravel again, and inevitably it does. And it's because we are there unraveling it, because our subconscious is telling us we are stuck. We're focused on the wrong thing. And so we start paying attention to the circumstances around us as being what's important, which is why she's focused on him. And spirit is not in the picture, except for trying to prod the subconscious to hurry up and help us learn this lesson so we can free ourselves. We can pull, look how loose those chains are. They could pull them right over their own heads. It's not like it's cinched up around their necks. This is fantastic symbolism. So in a way, what's being created here instead of purpose is the attachment. We created an attachment. Okay. Death, another not so fun card. We won't stay here too long, don't worry. Here is where the feminine is. She has blood on her hands. She is completely lost in emotional grief. The male, the masculine, he is gone. He can't even function. He's completely non-functional, ineffective, laying on the ground. Spirit is here saying something's got to change. I have to become now the angel of death and put an end to this situation because we are super stuck. So I want to remind you that this is connecting beauty to victory or beauty to emotions. So this is what happens where instead of being attached to the illusion, which is mental, this is when we are overcome with emotions to the point where we can't do anything. True overwhelm. We can't think, we can't rationalize. We are so emotional, nothing can happen. And you have this new character of the Hierophant who's there trying to help us out. He's there as a mediator between us and spirit to say, hey, I might have some keys for you, or you may have learned some things in the past that could really help you right now if you would just pay attention to your better ideas. And of course, there's a child here now who's innocent on the bottom, just looking at death with full innocence. Oh, look, cool, a horse. You also have in the distance, I don't know if you can see right above the yellow on the far left, there's a little boat in the distance. I always like to think of that as That's the weird random circumstance coming into your life to help you wake up and realize that you're stuck. Because often when you are in this far of an extreme, you don't even know that you're there. You're not conscious of the impacts you're having on everyone around you in your life, because you're overwhelmed. You're so full of emotion, you don't have room for even being aware. Okay. And then we have temperance, and temperance is all about balance. It exists in the center. You don't see the masculine and feminine here because this is the center pillar, but you're balancing water with land. So the moving and the fixed, pouring between two chalices, keeping things in, it's a dynamic moving balance. On the forehead of the angel is a symbol for the sun, and far in the distance is a symbol of the crown at the top of the mountain. And the mountain has always symbolized the great work or the accomplishment of purpose. So we've covered the lovers, the devil, temperance, and death. We're going to keep going down. The lovers come back one more time here with judgment. Now, judgment in the tarot is not judgment like we like to discuss in culture today, where we say, don't judge me. It's not that kind of judgment. This is the moment of truth. So you see that the angel has an official looking trumpet. So it's more similar to if you play any sports or you're doing anything that has a time limit and then the buzzer sounds. What happens when the buzzer sounds? When the buzzer sounds, the game is over. The score is counted and we are all free to do something else. Play the same game again, play a new game. If you're thinking about like basketball players, for example, when the buzzer sounds and the game is over, they essentially cease to be basketball players. They may not know that, they may not operate that way, but the game is over. Now they're just people. They're people walking around on a wood floor in funny outfits because their purpose is no longer activated. So at this moment of judgment is the end of the game, because we're connecting the mind or splendor down to kingdom, which is where things are happening right now. So this is part of the process of moving from something that has been in the planning stages and is now being done. It's happening right now. So that is the moment of truth. We have those familiar characters again. I want to point out that here, you notice that the male and the female have swapped places, or maybe we have switched to standing on the other side. Because before, maybe we were looking up at them and now we're looking down if we're centered on this tree and we see them from the other side. And you do kind of see that we're looking at them from behind. So our point of view has shifted because it's now down here at the bottom. So the male and female on the lovers are pointing down to the mountain or the great work, the purpose accomplished, the potential that we can do something awesome with our lives. On the judgment card, there's a child. Something has been given birth. Life has been created. Purpose has been at least begun to be accomplished. And you can even see in the distance, there's another pair with another child. So interesting. I'll let you think on your own what that might be. They're coming out of boxes because the game is over, right? They're free. She is looking up at spirit. Consciousness is looking up. Subconsciousness is looking up. Spirit has eyes open because it's the judgment moment. The child is even looking because what's happening here is the assessment of our progress. We look to spirit, our truest version of ourselves that knows who we are and that we are infinite beings. That is the judgment that matters. It's not those outside of us and their opinions of what we're doing that matters. Is what does my inner spirit connection, what do I get from my spirit? And this is where joy comes from. Joy comes from my inner knowing that I am accomplishing my purpose. That is fulfillment. That is the promise of the lovers. This is the promise fulfilled. If you look just at spirit, you see how this line slowly moves up. If you look just at the feminine conscious, we could have picked anyone, but we picked that, the conscious part of us, that's moving down. So we have a separation happening as we move down the tree of life. So on the lovers, they're making an equilateral triangle, but it's a more extended triangle as we move down the tree, because we're moving away from spirit in order to manifest something in the physical. So again, there's no accidents there. We have hands separating. We have hands pointing up and pointing down. And then we have hands coming together for that review, that moment of truth. We have the great work of the mountain, the illusion, and the child. So that's the objective, the object, what we've called into being. So let's pull some lessons before our time is up. What if we focus on our feelings or our inner knowing? So feelings meaning that connection to my inner knowing, my experience of myself to determine the highest objective, as opposed to emotions. You know, some people use those words as synonymous, but that we get sensations from spirit, focusing on that versus our reactionary emotions to circumstances. What if we serve this higher calling that is easy to connect with through our feelings, and that we free our subconscious to create the conditions for the fulfillment of this purpose? So by focusing on spirit, that frees the masculine subconscious to create those conditions for the fulfillment of purpose. And we struggle when we ignore or deny the truth of our power. That's what the devil's teaching us about with illusion. We struggle when we are attached and resist change. That's death. We struggle when we stop moving and lose sync with the dynamic dance of balance. And in the end, the only score that matters is the assessment by our own spirit. Did we follow the blueprints? And we are judged on both the quality of our being and the quality of our creations. And once the buzzer sounds, we are free from the rules of the game to emerge into a new existence. And this is something I use frequently since I learned this through this exploration of symbolism. If you don't like the way things are going, you can create a moment of truth. You set some date in the future, which doesn't have to be far into the future, when you are going to tally your results, assess, and start again, instead of being in a constant wheel of progress that never resolves. This is definitely a huge key here. So where does all this come from? I mentioned the lineage of King Solomon. King Solomon is written about in the Bible in the book of Kings. He's known as Solomon the Wise. He's the son of David. He was a very different king from David, where David was a warrior king and fought to conquer the area and the tribes surrounding. Solomon wanted to bring everyone together because he had the point of view that all humans had the same potential to be divine. If their people in Israel were so chosen and so good, why were they not living like divine beings? Why were they conquering neighboring tribes? So he said, maybe it's because of our denial of what we have in common with those other peoples. We've actually missed pieces that they have. They may have pieces we need. So he actually brought everyone together to share knowledge and learning over decades to put together a system that is being handed down through the Solomonic tradition all the way to today. So that's why we call it a Solomonic tradition, because these traditions existed before him, but what he did was consolidate them into one system that would work for all the different peoples that he had contact with. And the same system exists today. This is me teaching the final retreat of a 10-month process of learning Universal Kabbalah or Mystery School Kabbalah through the Modern Mystery School. We have life activation, which is an actual session that we do to help awaken people more to their spirit connection, to help them engage with spirit. And then there's initiation, which is to connect us with greater knowledge and tools and the authority to use these things to better ourselves first, and then to serve humanity. So we start with healing ourselves, and then we turn our tools to help others, all towards the goal of achieving world peace, knowing that peace starts with me, and then I share that with those in front of me. And if we all can do more of this, then that can get us to a place where we can actually experience world peace. If you want to know more about this, this is something I can share with you. You can have a free consultation with me. It's a 1-hour in-person or Zoom call, and you can sign up at our website, blessoterra.center/consultation. And here is my contact information. So please feel free to reach out to me or my wife, Chiana. You can call or text us, or you can visit our website, blessoterra.center. Or you can check out our online community. It's a private community just focused on this work at inspire.blessoterra.center.